Hello and welcome to the Teaching Our Kids podcast, a place for teachers, parents, and everyone in between to learn about how kids learn. Hi, Becky.
Hi, Ashton. Good morning.
Good morning. So today is, I feel like, a very important part of our homeschool, public school topic, but it's really uncomfortable for me because it's controversial and it hurts people's feelings, and I am such a conflict avoider. But I'm putting myself out there for this, so I'm going to be a little spazzy, but it'll be good.
Well, there's some kudos to you for doing something hard.
Yes. I mean, if it's uncomfortable, it usually means it's going to be good, right? That's what I've been telling myself. So today I want to talk about like the really controversial things in school, things like religion, politics, and gun violence. They're my three big topics today, and I wanted to start it out with, I have these statistics, which I sent you. I don't think you probably can't look at them right now because you're on your phone, but I will talk about them and I'll share the graphic. But it is the percentage of homeschooled students ages 5 through 17 with a grade equivalent of kindergarten through 12 whose parents selected these reasons for homeschooling in 2019. So there's, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know, like 7 or 8 reasons.
Oh, yeah.
The top thing, I think it's like 80%, was a concern about school environment such as safety, drugs, or negative peer pressure.
Yeah.
So we sort of talked about that in our bullying one a little bit. And we're also going to touch on that today with like the gun violence. So that's like 80% of homeschoolers. That's their reason for homeschooling.
That honestly doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Like, I think I would say that, maybe even if I had to guess, like probably 50% of homeschooled kids are homeschooled because they tried traditional school and didn't work.
Yeah.
Right. And they were pulled out of that setting for one of those three reasons. And that's where they are now. That
statistic might also be on this page, which I'm going to share the link, but it's at the government. It's the National Center for Education Statistics. It's a government. So that's where I'm getting this. So the next one is at coming in at like 74% is a desire to provide moral instruction. So that's
moral instruction.
That's kind of a broad, like, I don't even know what that means. It can mean different things for different people, but that was what it says. So I would, that's a broad thing. Then we go about same percentage is an emphasis on family life together, which I feel like is a heavy unschooled reason too. Like you get to be together more.
That's definitely one of, and with a combination of other things among with that, but that's got a lot to do with with why we homeschool.
And then we have, let's see, 70% a dissatisfaction with academic instruction in schools.
That'd be the other 50%.
Yeah. Why? The other reason. Yeah, you're the family life and the dissatisfaction with academic instruction. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Then we go to, what is it, like 58% a desire to provide religious instruction.
How many? What percentage?
It's like 58.9. Also, this is from 2019, so I don't know how much that'll be changing after COVID, but...
Yeah, I bet that some of those have swayed a little bit.
But yeah, so a desire to provide religious instruction, which I think is interesting. Like, I find that interesting that that's separate from the moral instruction, but it is. Yeah. I guess there was enough that said morals and enough that said religion that they made them two different. Then what do we got? 54% a desire to provide a non-traditional approach to a child's education. That is also one of your probably reasons.
Yeah, that's, I guess, when I was saying 50 and 50, it's more than just two variables, because it's not just like a dissatisfaction with traditional schools. It's more so a belief in alternative.
Doing it a different way, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Let's see. Then we have other reasons, 34%. Then we have special needs, which I knew was going to be on here. That's about 23%. or a child with a physical or mental health problem, 15%, or a temporary illness is 2%. So we get way down there. So I just want to talk about statistics because I'm trying to do this discussion. I don't want to discuss like my opinion necessarily, just give my perspective and my experiences on some of these topics. So I wanted to start with cold, hard statistical facts. Can't go wrong. You know, feelings always muddle things up. So facts are, these were statistics taken. And like I said, the top one is the school environment, safety or drugs. And then that desire to provide moral instruction, family life. Yeah, so down. So those are the statistics. And then I wanted to talk first about my personal school. Like when I went to school, it was in a religious school, in a Catholic school. I grew up going to Catholic school from grade K to 12. So school was church and church was school. And I learned a lot of lessons about being good and kind in school. And I was guided by my parents a lot. And I never felt, I know some people who were deep into religious schools kind of feel that oppression or hate or fear or like power from being in that. I never felt that way. Like I had a good way through my school. Like I never felt oppressed by the religious side. And I really think that a lot of that has to do with my parents and how they helped, you know, I don't know, surround me as I was going through it.
Okay.
And pick the people we were around and, you know, the lessons that were important that they reinforced or not reinforced, kind of, that the school gave us. So that is definitely the key to why my school experience was a good one. And I wanted to say that about any schooling experience, unschooling, regular schooling. I mean, it's the parents. The teachers can only do so much, you know, and your parents have to help guide you. That's what you're here for. That's why these.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you have parents who I'm sure there's situations where, you know, the Catholic school might be the only safe option or the best, right? Like I've heard that before. And that could definitely get in the way if the Catholic school is not in line with the family's, you know, beliefs. So I think there are definitely plenty of different ways. Or, you know, just say a child who is one that wants to challenge religion, right? Or has a lot of, that can be taken totally out of context in the religious setting, but this is just like an intuitive child. So there's definitely plenty of opportunities for kids to kind of wind up in that like oppressed feeling or controlled feeling in a religious setting, because there's only one way of doing it there, right? There's not a lot of wiggle room for kids.
I think it's better than it used to be when like we were younger and in school. I feel like there's a lot more open-minded people who are teaching and involved in that setting now, but I still think it's possible. And I wasn't like necessarily a challenger kid, so I wasn't in there like saying, you know, challenging their ideals, which probably was another reason it was easier for me to, you know, get the good experience from it. But yeah, you're right. And that's definitely one of those things. If you also, like, if you as a parent, if you're teaching your kids to do that, be more like outspoken and whatnot, that definitely the private school setting is more difficult.
But I agree with your point though, that it definitely, it's always going to come back to the connection that you've got with your kid, and whatever you're building at home is only going, it's just a support system, right? Like that's their backbone. And so wherever they wind up in whatever school setting, like that kind of sets the stage for the expectations going forward. And if they don't have a lot of expected out of them, or they don't feel safe in their home life or connected in their home life, then that's just going to lead them to a place that it, you know, can be very challenging.
Right. It definitely, and we've talked about this before in like our parenting styles and the social, emotional stuff. We've talked about
Yeah.
all of that connection before. Um, but it definitely helps to have that strong base when you're dealing with things like religion. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about, which I think is crazy because I just got on Facebook this morning and saw this whole controversial thing, and I was sitting here scribbling, writing about it before we got on, because I didn't do the research earlier because I was just feeling overwhelmed by this. But anyway, um, someone anonymously asked on my school system's website this morning, what grade do they start to teach about gender, sex, pronouns? And does the school notify parents or have a consent form or anything like that nature? And she said, or he, I don't know, said, I have heard it's second grade, but I have not been able to clarify. Let me tell you, this thread, ooh, girl.
I can feel the steam coming up right now. Like
It was, I was like, popcorn? No. It was wild. So it was an anonymous, like, this was just this morning while I was planning, like, and this is one of those controversial topics right now in schools. A lot, like, everywhere is doing different things. But this was for the school system my kids are in. Someone was asking, and of course people are like, oh my God, you know,
you shouldn't be teaching this. That's too young. They
right.
don't.
Or some people are like, why are you even thinking that? Oh my, like, they're in, like, and they do teach, kids do learn pronouns in second grade, but it's not like gender like it's he and she, and they learn to read those words and write with those words. They're not necessarily learning assignments of them or anything like that yet. But there was a whole thing, people accusing or being on that person's side or whatever, and then someone went and posted the curriculum, and they said there is a gender stereotypes class that can be covered in 7th grade. There's a gender identification and sexual orientation class for 8th and 9th grades in their curriculum. And it is optional, and the parent has to sign off on it for those specific lessons.
Right, sure, but surely I would guess at this point that if you've got some, I don't know, some progressive teachers or democratic teachers in the school system, that when it comes to English, you're likely going to hear like inclusivity in the world of grammar, right? Like you were talking about, right?
And
like
they're
that.
not going to have a whole lesson on it. It might be, they're not, like, they can't take the time, especially when they're in elementary school. It's not, I mean, maybe you'll have somebody who's a little extreme, but for the most part, it's going to be, and also, it's even going to be more the kids than the teachers who are teaching each other about these things.
Right.
Like, that's what I think. Especially when you hit middle school, man, they know everything. My 5th grader is like, he knows.
Yeah.
He knows what's going on. We do talk about a lot of stuff, but he knows more things than I even talk about.
Yeah.
So they know before you know. So what I wanted to say about this is, if you want to guide them into feeling a certain way about something, talk about it with them. Like, avoiding it is not gonna, because it's gonna be coming for you no matter what. Whether the school is teaching it, which I really don't think, it's not a big thing. Like, let's sit down and have a lesson on this, kids.
Right.
It just comes about naturally in conversation, unless you're in those classes I mentioned in the 7th or 8th grade where, you have signed up to hear about it. So, again,
so eloquently in the end, if you want your kids to feel a certain way about something or understand your opinion about something, the sooner you should probably talk to them way sooner than you assume.
Yes. Now, it's a gray area, which I'm going to get into in a little bit of my other topic, but like telling them things too soon versus, it's hard to pick, but there is ways to talk to your kids to guide them to build that, that prefrontal cortex, which is still building their maturity level. You got to can't just talk to them like an adult, but you can't always talk to them like can't just talk to them like an adult. You can't always talk to them like a baby either. You have to slowly build on your bridge to the knowledge that you want them to possess. And you have to do it at their level.
So we have this theory in my house where we give them the information that they want.
Mm-hmm.
I think adults are really good at like trying to over explain stuff.
Yes.
And so on those sticky subjects that you feel uncomfortable about, I mean, this is all based on your opinion too, right? Like, what do you want your child going into the world knowing? So around these subjects, I want them to know as much as possible. Mm-hmm. However, I get really uncomfortable talking about sex with my kids, so I made my husband do it. But we always would give them just what the amount of information that would satisfy them. Right. And once they stopped asking questions, like, it didn't have to be a detailed answer, but you'll see they're like, oh, okay, and then they move on. And it might not make sense where you even stop in your sentence or your explanation, but that's all they need. And they're good at that, and they'll take that and process that until the subject comes up again, and they're like, but what about this part? Mm-hmm. And we just continue on with that method until we get I need all the details.
Right. It's such a smart way. That's such a good, like, idea. Just tell them that what they need, and then you don't have to go farther with it.
Like, we don't do that. We still use, anatomically correct names for body parts. We still say the things that feel uncomfortable, but you can give them a little bit less than you would assume, and they'll be totally fine with it until they want more.
Yes, I agree. 1,000%. I love it. So I do want to just give anybody kudos if they've already started trying to broach any of these weird subjects with their kids, because just avoiding it is not the answer necessarily.
I would agree with that statement.
Yes.
I mean, even though I totally did around the sex.
I mean, look
all the time. Like, of course it comes, I mean, not like we're having conversation over dinner about it, but it comes up comfortably now because the ice has been broken.
God, we used to talk about all kinds of stuff at dinner with my parents. They would talk about anything. What? Yes.
It's healthy. It's good.
Yes.
I'm sure now that you have a great relationship with your parents and you can bring them anything, or in middle school or high school when you were experiencing those really tense, uncomfortable times when you needed somebody, right? Because they made that environment in your home like a safe place for you to bring up that quirky topic. You were able to do that. I'm certain of it.
Right. And that's where I'm saying, where you talk about it, it gets kids used to it. So then when they hear it somewhere else from their friends or from their crazy extreme teacher or whatever, they'll come and talk to you and ask you about it. And then you'd be like, well, and if you have that relationship, you're going to be that most important voice anyway.
Right.
Although it does get tricky when they get into that middle school, high school time. Mm-hmm. But that's for a later topic. All right. So the last little bit I want to talk about is the school gun violence and shootings and just traumatic things that happen at school. And I guess that would kind of go into that top 80% concern about school environment, like safety, drugs, and negative peer pressure. The safety's a big thing. And this is one of those things that a parent, no matter how much you guide them and protect them, you're not going to be able to control this kind of a wave. And it is scary and upsetting. And I am going to put some resources for anybody who wants to look into that about how to help cope, counseling and all that stuff. But it's just a scary thing, and I don't know. I'm trying to think of what else I had to say about it. Besides that, I feel for people that have dealt with it, and it makes me nervous on the regular still, because my kids go to public school.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things.
I mean, honestly, the only thing you can do to control it is vote, right? Mm-hmm. And to be involved in politically, or pull your kid out of school, because otherwise you don't have control over it. And you still don't in that situation. It's so funny we're talking about this right now. we actually had an incident this weekend, Tegan and I, where we were absolutely terrified, and I thought we were going to be in an incident like that. We were at the secondhand shop Savers, Parkville, and he wasn't too far from me. I had Lula in the cart, and I was trying on the shoe. And all of a sudden, some man came into the store screaming at the top of his lungs, "Mother, look what you've done to me. This is what you've done to me." And with this epidemic of mass shootings that were currently, I mean, I'm calling it an epidemic, pandemic, maybe.
But that's where your brain went.
But that's exactly what I thought of, especially because it's so often tied to mental health. Like, I'm like, oh, this guy has been affected by or traumatized by his upbringing. Got a lot that's going on, and we got to run. And it was the first thing that came to mind, and it was absolutely traumatizing. Like, Tegan, his face went white, his stomach got upset. He was like, we got to go now. And I was shaken up for the rest of the day. I couldn't imagine, if I weren't there with him, how that would have had an effect on him, right? Like, not feeling the safe and comfort of having your parents. That's just something that comes with life now, unfortunately.
Right. I do have a very personal experience with something sort of like this. When I was in 4th grade or 5th grade, my sister and I, who's 4 years younger than me, were walking home from school. We lived in Baltimore City. From my private Catholic school, we were walking to Grandma's house. Okay. My mom had to take my brother somewhere, so we'd walk there once a week or whatever. But we were walking, and we got to Bel Air and Frankfurt, and there was a shooting. We were like we were on the one corner, and they were in the middle of the street. And a boy came and shot another boy or teen. They had an argument or something, and it happened like right there. And literally, they ran this way, we walked this way. I cried the whole way home. It was crazy. My mom made us go back and like tell the police what we saw. But that wasn't even in school. That was just walking down the street.
Right.
So it's a wild world. But that happened. So I sort of did experience it, but I don't know. I would still walk on that street today. It didn't put me off. And then the other thing was, this past week at my kids' school, they had a lockdown. And usually, sometimes they'll have like practice lockdowns. Sometimes they have like, what do they call it? Modified. Like, the one time there was kind of like a funky dog out on the playground, like roaming. And they're like, I don't know if that has rabies, so they didn't go outside. Like that kind of a lockdown.
Right.
Or like if somebody got injured and they had like the ambulance coming, and so everybody had to be in their rooms. But this time they actually, like, it was real. And it was, I think there was 2 grown-ups arguing in a hallway that were not staff, and they had to get them out. And so all the kids had to go and be in class. And I didn't really ask my kids what they did. My neighbor, who has a preschooler, said they were hiding under a desk and the room was dark and he was scared. My kids didn't even tell me about it. They're like, yeah, we had a lockdown.
No big deal, right?
But I had and I don't know if we've necessarily talked to them directly about a school shooting being a thing. But I have mentioned to them about that, so you can be safe, so that, if there's anything happening that is not good, you need to listen to the teacher and do exactly, what you need to do. And they were fine. They were ready to go to school that next day. But a couple of my other parent friends, their kids were like anxious and feeling it. So.
Yeah, I don't know how I deal with that, because after having had that situation today or this weekend, like, I don't know that there is a right way to deal with it. And it's emotional for me. It's overwhelming to think that you have to prepare such a young person to, save their own life or a friend's life, right? Like, that seems like we're living in a a third world country or a war zone, but in the end, it is real. And I think there's plenty of resources out there that I'm sure you'll find to link up that folks who are questioning the best approach and the right amount of information to give their kid can use. But it's just sad that that's what we have to do now.
Right. And like I said, I gave my kids the information and not more at this point about it. Like, I didn't be like, well, this is why we have this lockdown. Like, because that's why I feel like maybe some of the other kids were a little bit more anxious. Maybe their parents told them a little more maybe than they need to know right now about it, besides just do this to be safe. So,
right.
And there was a lot of my parent friends that were bothered that the school didn't call us right as it happened. And I'm kind of like, I'm glad they were handling it instead of worrying about calling us.
Right.
And then if they called us, how many people would be running up there and making a big thing? They did call and give us a call later and told us that it happened and that it was handled and it was fine, which was awesome. But they didn't call us like during it, and a couple people were a little upset by that. But I'm like, I think it's better. I mean, what are you going to do? Go comfort your kid, right? Like run up there?
Sorry.
So anyway, that was wild, and I just wanted to bring a light to this kind of these topics because they're definitely a big reason a lot of people choose to homeschool or unschool over public schooling, and kind of give both of our experiences about it. And I think we did it. Hopefully I'm not talking too fast and you see me sitting here. But yeah.
You got your fidget toy.
Yes. But yeah, so that's about all I really wanted to go into about that. Like you said, it's kind of like it's a crazy world, but luckily we have it here in America better than a lot of other places could have it. So,
right. Well, it was a good chat. I think we covered some good statistics and
yes, that's what I was. All right, cool. I'm gonna thank you for watching today, and we have, let's see, this will be October's. We'll have November and December, so I got 2 more coming, and hopefully November is going to be my interview one.
Ooh.
And then December we'll do our favorite products and resources. So,
cool.